Molly Pitcher, retold by Emily Dolbear, illustrated by Catherine Pedalinsky. Long ago, before the United States was a country, a small but fearless baby named Mary was born on a dairy farm in the great state of New Jersey. Way back then, it was nothing but farmland and forests. Many folks came from other countries to settle here. Mary's mama and papa were no different. Maria and John Ludwig were hardworking people from Holland and Germany. They wanted to build a better life and raise a family too. This was where the tale of Mary Ludwig begins. Today, she's known as Molly Pitcher. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Baby Mary grew up quick. She barely had time to crawl before the clunking around of her wooden clogs on working on the farm with her brothers. Do you know how easy it is to make a dairy bull charge you and startle even a bit? Whenever Mary and her brothers set to charging, Mary never so much blinked an eye. Mary worked hard on the farm. She'd hoist on her shoulders a wooden yoke, twice as wide as she was tall. Dangling from each end of the yoke was a wooden bucket big enough to drown a horse. That's how Mary lugged fresh water to the farm animals and the creamy milk to the market. "Mary, come quickly," her mama would holler. "That milk isn't going to walk itself to the market." In time, the day came when Mary had to leave her family and earn her keep. She called so long to the cows, hung up her yoke, and went to work as a servant for a family. Before long, she met a fine young man named William Hayes, and they soon married. Round this time, America was a colony of the British, fighting to be its own country. Fathers, brothers, and sons were called. William became a soldier too. He worked as a gunner, and you can probably guess which weapon a gunner uses. Before much time had passed at all, William followed Mary into war. Mary wasn't the only wife that joined her soldier husband. Back then, women weren't allowed to be soldiers, but they did what they could. With a tiny needle and thread long enough to tie around the moon, Mary stitched uniform after uniform for the soldiers. She fed a whole brigade and then some with a single pot of stew. When she ran out of meat, Mary whipped up some flour and water and cooked over an open fire. She added a bit of grease and salt for good measure. That fire cake ended up tasting more like sawdust than a fire cake, but it did fill the bellies of 1,000 soldiers, and William was grateful. On the battlefield, Mary would carry pitchers of water to the parched soldiers. She also brought water to cool the iron cannons, hot from firing. Long before, the men started calling her Molly, an old nickname for Mary. "Molly, bring us a pitcher of water, please," they'd call. "Molly, a pitcher." Finally shouting across the green fields, "Molly Pitcher!" And so Mary Ludwig Hayes became known as Molly Pitcher. One day in 1778, fighting broke out between the American colonists and the British Army in Mammoth, New Jersey. It was a mighty hot day and sun shone just as bright. Well, the sun, you might say. It was hot, and every word melted right into the ground as soon as it was said. That day, let me tell you, Mary couldn't bring fresh water fast enough. Thinking quickly, she grabbed a nearby winding stream with her bare hands, then flexing her muscle, she strapped it as straight as a pin. The water could now flow faster and quench the soldiers' thirst. After a long fight of stretching, quick as lightning, William was hit by fire. He collapsed to the ground, wounded and exhausted. "Mary, I can't do this anymore," he moaned. Mary didn't think twice. She dropped the pitcher of water, gathered her shard skirts, and took William's place in the cannon. Smoke and heat and danger were everywhere. Mary kept firing that cannon. Ammunition whizzed by her head. One witness later reported shot the enemy right between her two legs. There was nothing left but a single hole in her petticoat. Just imagine. The redcoats, the name for the British soldiers, had an account of the uniform color, were completely defeated at Mammoth, and Mary did her part on the longest single day of fighting in the War for Independence. Even the great George Washington spotted her on the battlefield and gave her a commendation and dubbed her Captain Molly. Some say Mary remarried after William died some years later. Others say she carried on alone and happy enough. But there's one thing that everybody agrees on. She fought for independence as hard as any soldier. So next time you fill a jug with water, think of the fearless baby who became Molly Pitcher. The end.